Girl, you keep saying you want to start a business, but I don't think you have it in you. Like, who's going to consider you an expert? What have you done that's so special? Like, you don't even know your niche. Listen, you have no idea what you're doing. And if you ask me, you're going to fail. Plus, who's going to pay you that much for your services anyway? Girl, bye. Okay, y'all, let me be real for a second. That nasty diabolical voice you just heard in the intro, that wasn't me talking. That was the loud, annoying voice in my head trying to shut me down. And honestly, I can't stand her, but I show her grace because I know the trauma that she's lived through. And here's the truth. I bet I'm not the only social worker who has said those things to herself. If you're watching this, I already know you want to start a business. And if you want that, chances are you've heard those same doubts in your ear. In fact, I'd bet money on it. So today, I'm sharing the exact steps that I took to silence that voice so I could finally move forward on my business journey without her holding me back. Plus, I've created a handy document to walk you through this process for yourself. You can grab it here at the QR code or it's linked below in the description box. All right, let's get into it. And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through this 5-step process that helped me clear that crazy ass voice out of my head. Now, she's not completely gone. She still lives there rent free, unfortunately. But I have used these techniques to silence her, to quiet her down, to make her go away much faster. And these are the steps that I'm going to share with you today. I still remember when I started college to get my bachelor's degree. It was right after finishing my associate's degree at around age 35. And baby, let me tell you, university was extremely different than community college. Baby, it hit me hard. Do you hear me? I quickly realized that if I wanted to graduate at the top of my program, I was going to have to work a lot harder than I did at community college. No more slacking, no more fun and games, no more playing around. I had to literally dig in. So that's what I did. I dug in deep. I read those textbooks that I didn't want to touch. I said no to hanging out with friends so I could grind on my assignments. And I pulled late nights writing papers that I hated. I would work this way for 15 weeks, take a break for about a month and a half. Then I was back at it for another 15 weeks. And then at the end of that 15 weeks, I had a 3-month break for summer. And I did this all for a piece of paper that didn't even guarantee success when I graduated. So, step one that I took to quiet that nagging voice in my head, I started treating my business like I did my MSW program. When I was in my MSW program, I was all in. I invested serious money and time, even on days that I didn't feel like it. Why? Because I knew that the satisfaction of earning that degree was going to be way greater than the temporary pain that I had to endure to obtain it. Now I do the same with my business. I have what's called internal and external months. My internal months run from October to March. So that's technically Q4, quarter four, and quarter one of my business. So you know that business typically runs in quarters. So Q4 and Q1 of my business are what I like to call internal months. My external months start in April and run through September, which are Q2 and Q3. Quarter two and quarter three. So my internal months are for deep learning, just like with my MSW program, though not quite as demanding. But this is essentially the time where I sharpen my skills and I stay innovative. I always like to say leaders are readers and earners are learners. I know I saw the quote somewhere else where it said readers are leaders, but I disagree because I know plenty of people who are extensive readers and don't have a leadership bone in their body. So, but what I do know is all leaders who are effective are extensive readers, right? And so really that's where my internal months come in my business. And so the takeaway from this is you won't always want to do the tasks that you have to do on your journey to being a successful social work entrepreneur. But trust me, the pain of staying stuck in that job that you hate 2 more years is way worse than the temporary discomfort of doing the work today. Back when I was still working for someone else, I can remember my whole routine. I would set my alarm, I would lay my clothes out the night before, I would wake up, get ready for work, go to work all day, come home, cook dinner for my family, clean, do whatever it else I needed to do with the family. And then later on that night, I would lamp out on the couch and watch YouTube or Netflix or whatever until it was time for me to go to sleep and do that whole process over again. Now, essentially, I was giving that nasty little diabolical voice in my head too much free time. So the second step that I took to quiet that nasty little voice was drawing a line in the sand. So essentially, I told myself that if I could put in 37 and a half hours a week building their business, I could definitely carve out about 5 hours a week to build my business. Now, for me, that meant waking up earlier on Monday through Friday because my brain after work was non-functional, right? I knew that when I got home, I wasn't going to be disciplined enough to sit down and do work in my business just because typically my brain was fried and I was just really too busy after work. But before work was another situation. My brain for me is just more fresh when I first wake up. So what I started doing was waking up earlier than I normally did so I could work on my business for an hour Monday through Friday. So that guaranteed me 5 hours of focused work in my business. Now, make no mistake, I didn't want to get up earlier. I wanted to stay in the bed and sleep a little longer. But I did it as a gift to my future self. I knew I didn't want to work that job forever. So something was going to have to give. And that was the thing, right? Giving more time to my business, giving some time to my business. Listen, we can all come up with excuses on why we don't have the time. But what I have figured out is we have a lot more time than we think we do. The time you spend doom scrolling, the time you spend watching YouTube videos about how to start your business, the time you spend talking on the phone with friends or watching TV. It's all time that you're not utilizing to build your dream business, to build your dream life, to build an exit strategy from that job you hate, sis. Girl, you hate that job. Build an exit strategy. So this is the takeaway. You'll never have enough time, or at least you'll never feel like you have enough time. And what I know for me is time is more precious than money. But we really don't treat it that way, right? Money, you lose it, you can make it over again. Time, you lose it, it's just gone. And so if you want to grow your business, you have to make time for it, and it has to be absolutely non-negotiable. Which brings me to the next thing that I did. I started thinking about my future self a lot, and I started thinking about her in relation to my past self. I remember when I started my bachelor's program, I didn't think that I would go for a master's. It wasn't on my radar. To be honest, the bachelor's wasn't even on my radar at the time. That's a whole nother story. If you want to hear about it, let me know in the comments. But it wasn't on my radar. So when I got into my bachelor's program and people were talking about their master's, I started thinking about it. But honestly, I wasn't sure that I could get accepted to or graduate a master's program. I don't think I had that belief in myself at the time. But with every semester that went by, I got stronger, I got smarter, and I became more and more confident in myself, which led to me applying for, getting accepted to, and graduating my first master's program and then doing the same for my MSW. And the wonderful thing about this, the way that I shocked myself during that time is because not only did I graduate, but I graduated cum laude. So going back to this time when I did this accomplishment that was in my past, and I was starting my business over again, which is a different story. But going back to this, I use this to quiet that voice even more by writing a letter to myself every day for 30 days straight. I wrote myself a letter of things that I had already accomplished and thanked myself for not giving up on those things. So for an example, school. I also thanked myself for waking up early to work on my business when I didn't want to saying no to that vacation one year and instead reading the books. And I also thanked myself for showing up for me. And this wasn't just some cute journaling trick. I put those letters in envelopes, I put a stamp on them, and I gave them to a close friend who promised not to open them. And then a year later, every day for 30 days, she mailed those letters back to me. And when I got those letters, I was so proud that I had kept my promise to myself, that I had worked on my business like I said I was going to work on it, and that I had saw the fruits of my labor, and that I was able to do this even when old Eveline showed up. And so the takeaway from this is you can't eat the fruit of the seeds you plant today, but give the seeds time, and the fruit they bear will feed you again and again for a lifetime. Okay, this one might be a little controversial, but here goes. I believe in God, but I also believe in spirituality. So for me, that is Father God, Mother Earth, and the universe. But for a long time, I struggled to practice these beliefs because of family members' opinions about my practices, right? A lot of family members just don't agree. And to be honest, there are going to be people who watch this video that don't agree. And so there was a time when I just stopped practicing everything. I stopped praying, I stopped meditating, I stopped going for walks in nature, I stopped talking to the ancestors, I stopped doing all the things that bring me peace and calm and guidance. And let me tell you, when I cut off that flow, old Eveline was celebrating because, baby, that's the exact space that she loves to run wild in. So, to quiet that voice, I created a chart that brought together the Bible, CBT, and the 12 universal laws so that I could use them to work together for my wellness. And so with this, I was able to start walking and meditating and praying and engaging in the spiritual practices that made me feel whole and happy, regardless of what anyone thought, and still regardless of what anyone thinks. And now I'm not going to lie, this was a real test because when you have worldviews and practices that deviate from the traditional worldviews and practices, that sometimes can upset a lot of people. I mean, there might be people upset right now watching this video. But the takeaway here is to do what aligns with your wellness, even if it looks different from what works for someone else. Because to quiet that voice, your mind has to be in the best space possible, and that includes utilizing practices that puts your mind in the best space possible. And so finally, after putting all this work in to get my mind right, I was able to engage in practices that was able to shift my thinking from what if I fail to what if I succeed. And so in step 5, to quiet that voice even more, I engaged in heavy redirection practices. I'm talking about flipping those negative thoughts into positive thoughts, but not that fake toxic positivity stuff. Listen, starting a business is difficult. It's a lot of work, and there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. Trust me, I've had plenty of bad days. Matter of fact, I've had a couple of bad months. However, when I felt discouraged and ready to quit, I gave myself space to feel that way. But the key was I always put a time limit on it. Sometimes we do need a break. And so when my mind and my body is telling me I need a break, I listen to it. The key to this time and keeping that voice quiet is knowing that this downtime isn't wasted. This is oftentimes the space where your business grows because this is the space where you grow. And this is happening behind the scenes. And this might also be a moment where you need to pivot or you just need to reframe. But the key is to use this time wisely to come back stronger, more focused, and ready to move forward on your business journey. And so the takeaway here is that when you hit a roadblock, do not stop. Follow the detour signs. And you can only do that by practicing good redirection. And you know what? Even after all these years, old Eveline is still lurking around out here in these streets. But now she's more of a whisper than a megaphone. And with the mental muscles I built doing these exercises, I'm able to shut her down real quick. And that's a good thing because those skills came in handy when I decided to leave traditional social work. And if you want to hear more about that story, check out this video right here.